What happens when two comedy legends clash live on daytime television? And the host is caught right in the middle? The Kelly Clarkson Show, usually known for its laughter, music, and feel-good energy, suddenly turned into a tense battleground between Kevin Hart and Wanda Sykes. What was supposed to be a fun, light-hearted episode promoting their new project together became one of the most uncomfortable moments in talk show history. Before we get into what really went down, make sure you hit that subscribe button, drop a comment below, and tell me whose side you would have taken. Because trust me, by the end of this story, you'll definitely have an opinion. The atmosphere in the studio that morning was electric. The audience was buzzing with excitement, knowing they were about to see two comedic icons share the stage. Kelly Clarkson's smile was radiant as she welcomed Kevin Hart first. He bounded onto the set full of energy, cracking jokes and high-fiving fans in the front row. His energy was contagious, classic Kevin. A few moments later, Wanda Sykes walked out with her trademark calm confidence, the perfect foil to Kevin's larger-than-life personality. The crowd cheered just as loudly for her. Kelly greeted them both warmly, the three of them settling into the couch as the applause died down. Everything seemed fine at first. Kelly began with an innocent question about their creative process and how they balanced such different comedic styles. Kevin jumped in eagerly, animated as ever, explaining that comedy is all about adapting to different energies. His hands were flying as he talked about collaboration, finding common ground, and how the best work comes when everyone brings their unique voice to the table. Wanda nodded along, smiling politely. But if you looked closely, you could see a flicker of something behind her expression, something guarded. When Kevin finally stopped to take a breath, Wanda spoke up in her slow, deliberate tone. She agreed that adaptation mattered, but added that it was just as important not to lose your authentic voice in the process. The way she emphasized the word authentic made Kevin's smile falter just slightly. Kelly noticed it too. She quickly tried to steer things back towards something light-hearted, asking about the funniest moment they'd had on set. Kevin jumped in again, launching into one of his signature storytelling routines. He described a chaotic day on set where everything went wrong. Props falling over, people forgetting their lines, everyone cracking up mid-scene. He acted out the story with so much energy that the audience was in stitches. Kelly laughed along, clapping her hands as Kevin wrapped up the story with one of his signature punchlines. But Wanda? She just sat back with her arms crossed and a small smirk that didn't quite reach her eyes. When the laughter finally quieted down, Wanda leaned toward Kelly and said calmly, "That's interesting, because I remember that day very differently." The audience went silent instantly. The shift in energy was sharp, almost physical. Kevin's laughter faded, replaced with confusion. Wanda went on, explaining that the day Kevin called hilarious chaos was actually a nightmare for the crew and cast. She said that what Kevin saw as improvisation and fun had actually caused multiple takes to be ruined, and that the shoot had gone hours overtime because he kept going off script. Kevin's smile disappeared completely. He straightened up, his tone tightening. He said improvisation was part of comedy, that spontaneity often led to the best moments on screen, and that if you didn't leave room for creativity, you'd end up with something robotic. He asked her point blank if she was seriously criticizing him for being creative. Wanda didn't blink. "There's a difference between improvisation," she said, "and steamrolling everyone else on set." Then came the word that hit like a slap: unprofessional. Kelly tried to laugh it off, her voice slightly higher than usual, saying that both Kevin and Wanda had great points and maybe it was just a difference in style, but neither of them hurt her. Kevin leaned forward, his voice rising just enough to be noticeable. He said he'd been in the industry for decades, built an empire from the ground up, and no one had ever accused him of being unprofessional. He said that maybe the real issue wasn't about him being too much, but about some people not being able to handle his energy. Everyone knew what he meant. Wanda's response was a sharp laugh, short, humorless. She said, "Energy is great. Passion is great, but so is respecting people's time and talent." She went on to describe how crew members had to stay hours, longer than scheduled, because certain people she didn't even have to name him, couldn't stick to the agreed plan. Kelly's nervous smile flickered. You could see her trying to pivot back to safer ground. She asked about their upcoming project, hoping to pull them back to promoting the film. For a moment, it seemed like it might work. Kevin started describing the project's premise, his body tense but his voice controlled. He talked about how much he'd poured into it, the research, the commitment, the long hours. When he finished, Wanda added smoothly, "Oh, he was definitely committed. Commitment means different things to different people, though. For me, it's about showing up prepared, respecting the director's vision, and remembering you're part of a team, not the whole show." Each word was like a dart. Kevin's jaw tightened. He asked if she had a personal problem with him, because it was starting to sound like it. The audience was silent now. No laughter, no applause, just tension. Wanda met his gaze and said she didn't have a problem with him personally, but she did have a problem with certain behaviors that made other people's jobs harder. She said she'd been in this industry long enough to know the difference between collaboration and domination. Kelly looked trapped. She tried to say something about how creative people can clash because they care so much, but Kevin cut her off. He stood up suddenly. The audience gasped. Cameras scrambled to follow his movement. He said he didn't sign up for this, that if Wanda had a problem, she should have come to him privately instead of ambushing him on live television. He thanked Kelly for having him, his voice polite but cold. Wanda stood too, her tone matching his intensity. She said she had tried to talk to him, privately, multiple times, but he never listened. She said maybe the problem was that he'd surrounded himself with people who only told him what he wanted to hear. Kevin turned toward her fully now. You could see the anger in his posture. He said she barely knew him outside of this one project, and that if he was really the problem, why did so many people love working with him again and again? Wanda didn't flinch. Just because others don't speak up doesn't mean they don't have concerns, she said. It just means they're too scared to say anything. The audience was dead silent. You could feel everyone holding their breath. Kelly finally stood up too, trying to position herself between them, not quite intervening, but clearly desperate to calm things down. Her voice was shaking as she said maybe they could take a breath. Sit back down and talk it out calmly. Kevin shook his head. This has been building, he said, looking at Kelly. She decided to unload on me here on your show. I'm not going to sit here and be someone's punching bag. Wanda shot back instantly. Of course you're walking away. That's what people do when someone tells them the truth. You love to talk about growth and authenticity until someone actually holds up a mirror. Kevin stopped mid-step, his back turned to her. For a moment, he didn't move. Then he turned around slowly. His expression wasn't just angry, it was hurt. He said that he'd built his career on being real, on being himself, on pushing boundaries. Maybe that made him intense, but that's what people loved about him. He said he wasn't going to apologize for being passionate. Wanda folded her arms and said, authenticity isn't an excuse for making everyone else miserable. Real growth means being able to hear hard truths without making yourself the victim. Kevin's voice rose. I'm tired of being made out to be the villain just because I expect excellence, he said. If that makes me difficult, fine. I'd rather be difficult and excellent than easy and mediocre. Wanda fired back instantly. There's a huge space between mediocre and being impossible to work with. Plenty of successful people achieve greatness without destroying morale along the way. Kelly looked ready to cry. She paced in small steps, trying one more time to mediate. She said that maybe both of them had valid points, that creative passion can lead to clashes. But that didn't make either of them bad people. Kevin looked at her and gave a small nod. But his focus was still locked on Wanda. He said she could have gone through professional channels if she had issues, not aired it all on TV. Wanda replied sharply that she had gone through the proper channels, producers, meetings, even private talks with Kevin himself, and nothing changed. She said public accountability was sometimes the only way left. Kevin's tone turned heavy. Do you realize what you're doing? He asked. You're not just coming for me, you're hurting the whole project. Everyone who worked hard on it. Wanda shot back. If you're so concerned about everyone else, maybe you should have thought about that when your behavior made their jobs harder. They were going in circles now, voices overlapping, the tension thick enough to choke on. Kelly looked toward the producers off camera, mouthing something that clearly meant cut to commercial, but the cameras kept rolling. Kevin said he'd worked with hundreds of people who loved collaborating with him, who praised his energy and positivity. He challenged Wanda to explain why she was the only one with such an issue. Wanda gave a cold smile. That's the oldest trick in the book, turning valid criticism into a personal attack. I'm not here to make it personal. I'm telling you what I saw, what I experienced. If that makes you uncomfortable, that's not my problem. Kelly's voice broke slightly as she raised it over them both. She said that clearly there were issues to be addressed, but her show wasn't the right place for this kind of confrontation. She asked if they could at least agree to disagree for now, finish the interview gracefully, and work things out later. Kevin turned to her, his anger fading into something almost apologetic. He said he appreciated her effort, but staying and pretending everything was fine would be dishonest, and dishonesty wasn't him. Wanda agreed, saying she had no interest in pretending either. She said she was sorry for putting Kelly in such an awkward spot, but that sometimes uncomfortable conversations were necessary. Kelly's face said it all: exhaustion, disbelief, and heartbreak. She said her show was meant to be a safe, positive space, not a battlefield. She said she never wanted anyone to feel attacked or ambushed under her roof. The studio was completely still. Kevin exhaled, rubbed his temples, and looked at Wanda one last time. "You got what you wanted," he said quietly. "Congratulations." Then, without another word, he walked off the stage. The audience didn't know whether to clap, gasp, or stay silent. Some people were already pulling out their phones, recording as Wanda stayed standing beside Kelly. Wanda turned to Kelly and said softly, "I didn't want it to go like this, but maybe it needed to." Kelly didn't answer. She just looked down, then back up at the audience, and with the kind of calm professionalism only a veteran performer could muster, she said, "We'll be right back." The show cut to commercial, but by then the damage was already done. Clips of the confrontation started flooding social media within minutes. Fans took sides immediately. Some said Wanda was brave for speaking up. Others said she was out of line for calling him out in public. As for Kelly Clarkson, people praised her for keeping her composure, for not losing control even as the segment unraveled right in front of her. In the days that followed, statements started circulating. Sources close to production said the tension between Kevin and Wanda had been simmering for weeks. Others said Kelly's producers were blindsided, that nothing in the pre-interview had hinted at conflict. But no matter how you spin it, one thing is clear: what happened on that stage wasn't scripted. It wasn't a PR stunt. It was two people, both brilliant in their own right, colliding under the spotlight in a way that left everyone watching stunned. So, what do you think really happened? Was Wanda right to call Kevin out publicly? Or was Kevin right that there's a time and place for those conversations? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. Because this story, it's only the beginning.